All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to week 3. Here we are at week 3. Hopefully, we're missing a few people. Some people are sick, traveling, making a unicorn birthday cake. Someone is. That's not happening in my house. I have no skills in that way. All right. We're just going to open with a question at our tables, right? Thank you. We're going to open with a question at our tables. Here is the opening question. What is something that you've heard over and over again, right? If I've heard this once, I've heard it 100 times, right? Maybe it's something that your parents said as you were growing up. Maybe it's something that your boss just kind of, hammers home, or maybe it's an inside joke in your family. Maybe you can't think of something that somebody said, but maybe you have something that you just find yourself repeating over and over again. So go around and we'll have a few people at your table share. What's something you've heard over and over again? Okay. Real quick, we don't need the backstory, but what's a phrase that someone has heard over and over again? What are some of the things we had? A little birdie told me. Okay, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, I hated when people said that. Now I say it. Okay. Something else. Oh, okay. We have a Souderism, right? The more you do right, the more you get to do. And that must be true because he does a lot. Yeah. Okay. Are you nervous in the service? Yeah, so we just have these, phrases that bump around in our mind, things that we say again and again. Sometimes they're funny little things that keep us going. Sometimes they form our life, right? The more you do right, the more you get to do some, just all kinds of things. Well, on a more serious note, one of the things that I heard a lot growing up, I heard in church. And in the church that I went to, we always had a benediction, right? And the pastor would read a certain scripture over us or a prayer or something. And one of his favorite benedictions was Romans 12, 9 through 21, that he would read over us again and again. Now, as a child and a teenager, I kind of got annoyed with that, right? I'm like, okay, good grief, we've heard this again and again. I got it, blah, blah, blah. Be devoted to one another, blah, blah, all this stuff. And, be like, why are you saying the same thing again and again, right? Now, as an adult, I appreciate that, right? I appreciate that. I see what he was doing, right? He's putting the word in our mind again and again. He's helping God transform our minds, right? Because we come to church and we praise the Lord and we hear that we're forgiven and all that, and then we go out to the world, right? And the world's going to come back in and try to reform us. And so he's trying to send us out into the world saying, we've come here to worship, now you go out and continue to worship, right, by doing all of these things. So as an adult, I appreciate that, hearing these things again and again. So today, you might feel like, oh my goodness, I've heard these verses again and again. I'm trying to memorize them. I spent a week studying them. We're going to talk about them in the first half of our lesson. We're going to talk about them in the second half of our lesson, but we forget, right? I heard these verses. Now, I heard them and I knew them, but that doesn't mean I applied them and I did them, as I would go about my life. So we just need to hear them again and again, have them bump around in our heads, right? Because that's what the Spirit uses in our life as we go out to worship Him in our daily lives. So on that note, we're going to practice our memory verses. So, one, break up into either pairs or maybe 3 at your table, all right? Now, if you don't have anything memorized, you know what? It's okay. You just, what did we do? Verses 9 through, yes, but this week, not 9 through 13, is that what we did? Okay, so if you don't have it memorized, read it. Just read it out loud to somebody again, right? Just getting those verses bumping around in your head. If you try to memorize it, if you're working on it, and you have to peek every once in a while and you stumble, it's okay, right? Let's just practicing what we got. If you got it down, awesome and amazing. We have all different memorizing capabilities in the room. Okay, so just practice it with one another, because accountability, right, helps us. All right. All right, let's come back together. Now, what we had you do this last week was write it out again and again and again, hoping that that would be helpful. I don't know if that was helpful for you or not, but I'm seeing some nods, okay? So that's what we're going to do this next week. Is the suggestion is to write out the next section of verses. Okay, there's a reason. Okay, I'm like, I don't remember what I did, but I didn't do it. Kara has written the homework for the next week, so that's why I don't remember. Okay, so so write it out again and again. If you find something different that helps you, do something different. Now, you're going to be focusing on the next set of verses, but you know what? Go back to what we've already memorized too. Like we have to, just keep that bumping around in your head. All right. So as I've already said, right, you may have noticed you have a different font on your homework for this coming week, which means Kara has done that, and she's going to teach for us next week. Yay. Yeah, okay. So again, these verses, chapter 12, verses 9 through 21, is why we're actually studying Romans, right? We're studying this end part of Romans because of these verses, oddly enough, were bumping around in my mind the whole end of our Exodus study. Why were these verses bumping around in my mind the whole end of our Exodus study? Well, if you remember, when we were doing Exodus, you can divide Exodus up into two parts. And that first part is God saving his people from slavery, from the Pharaoh, from the serpent trying to kill them, right? And he brings them out of slavery. He covers them with his blood. He takes them through the water, and they're free, right? And it's awesome. That's that first part. And then the second part of Exodus is God taking them down to Sinai and giving them the law. Now that you're my children, now that we're free, right, that you're saved, this is how you respond. This is how you worship me. Right, these are the 10 commandments. This is the tabernacle and how you approach me and all that stuff. So the first half is what he saves us from. The second half is what he saves us to. And Romans is split up the same way. Probably 2/3 and 1/3, not half and half. But that first part of Romans is, right, what has he saved us from? Right? And it's the greater Exodus because we're not just saved from a political tyrant, but we're saved from our sin, from the punishment of eternal death from our sin, from the power of sin in our life, right? I've saved you from that. And then this part that we're in is, what has he saved us to, right? Now that you're saved, now that you're in that tree, how do you reflect on the mercy and live your life? It's the same pattern, right? Romans and Exodus have the same pattern. And that's why I think those verses were bumping around in my brain. If you only read the first half of Exodus or the first half of Romans, right, you might think, great, I'm free. I'm free from the consequences of my actions and nothing else, right? And you have kind of a cheap grace kind of a thing. If you only read the second half of either of these books, right, you kind of feel like, you can fall into legalism. I must do, and I do to earn my position before the Lord. That's why we have to read the whole thing. Right, read the whole book of Exodus, read the whole book of Romans, and we get things in the right order, and we understand how our relationship stands before the Lord, right? That we are saved by grace through faith, right, does not mean that obedience doesn't matter, right? God wants us to grow and mature and display him to the world, right? And he tells us how to do that. He wants us to respond in worship, and he tells us what that looks like. Right? And that's what we're studying, right? So becoming a child of God leads to good works. And we so often get it backwards, right? We think good works earns me and leads to becoming a child of God, right? We need to be secure in our status in Christ and his finished work, in his resurrection, ascension, and return, right? And our response is to worship, to love, to do good. Okay, get that right. All right. So I know I've talked about that before. I'm saying it again, right? Just the same things again and again. But I think we just need reminded to get that right in our heads. And there's individual verses in the Bible that spell that out for us. But we also have the overarching structure of whole books of the Bible that reinforce it too, right? What is God saying? Sometimes the structure of a book, right, tells us what God is saying, as well as the individual verses. So let's go to our individual verses. Chapter 12, open up your Bibles to Romans chapter 12. And we're going to read it together just to get it all fresh in our mind again, even though you just practice saying it to one another. So someone at this table, at this table here to my left, could you read verses 9 through 13? And then next here at Judy's table, can someone read verses 14 through 16? And then we'll just skip and we'll come over here to Cheryl and Cheryl's table. And can someone read verse 17 to 21? All right, thank you. Sorry, I wasn't trying to avoid your table for some reason. I don't know. Okay. All right. Now, this is quite a list of commands here. Boom, 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 right in a row, right? And as we thought of them this week and reflected on them this week, I hope you didn't feel overwhelmed, right? Because it could be a little overwhelming, right? Especially oh my goodness, I'm not doing this very well. Oh my goodness, I failed at this last week. Oh my goodness, right? But we need to remember, right? God is with us for a lifetime, right? We're in this for a lifetime. And yes, these should be growing in our life as we move forward. But, and it would be wonderful if we were all perfect in it tomorrow, right? But we're moving forward. We're moving forward. We're growing in one area, and then we're growing in another area, right? Just so don't be overwhelmed by this list. We have a lifetime of transformation. All right. On day one, I asked you to who has a, a heading in your Bible. Sometimes in your Bible, you have a heading over a certain amount of verses, right? And in my Bible, I do have a heading. I wondered if anybody else had a heading and what that is. Yes, Alana. Love and respect others. Okay. Anybody else have something different? Marks of a true Christian. Okay. Love in action, okay? Mine just says love. So love, what was marks of a true Christian, which is love and respect, okay? That kind of a thing. Now, these headings, right, they're not part of the original scripture, right? They're things that people have put in to help guide us as we're reading. And sometimes they're better than others, right? So we don't put all of our stock in a heading. But sometimes as you're reading through, it is nice. If you're thinking, well, what is the big point? Sometimes I'm just getting bogged down in the details. What if I step back, what is the big point of here? And sometimes that can help us, okay? Another way that can help us is I asked you, what words are used at the beginning of the passage and then at the end of the passage? You should have the same words. Evil and good. Is that pretty much across the board? Did somebody have something different in their translation? Love good, do good. Okay. Yeah, and I have evil in both. Right, good. So that is actually a better indication of what this is about, right? Because it comes right from the passage itself. Now, sometimes if you're reading a paragraph or two and you see the same word again and again and again, that's going to clue you in. What is the main point of this, right? What is the emphasis of this passage? And whatever this passage means, it has to be centered around these words, right? But sometimes it's at the beginning and at the end, like a bookend. We call them like a bookend, right? And that also is a clue to us as we're reading. This is the emphasis, right? So whatever we take away from this, it has to be centered around what is God's emphasis in this passage, right? It sets the emphasis. So we know, right, he's talking about love, he's talking about good, he's talking about evil. What's love? He's defining things for us to know, right? When he says, you need to be a living sacrifice. What is that? And I'm going to define for you what that is. So just two little hints, right? As you study Bible on your own, right? Look for repeated words at the beginning and the end to help us know what the emphasis is. So with that in mind, then on day 2, I asked you to fill in a blank. I think we'll have some different answers based on our different translations. Verse number 9, love must be what? Sincere. Do we have something different? Genuine. Sincere, genuine, anything else? Authentic. Okay. Love must be sincere, genuine, authentic. These are all good synonyms, right, for the same thing. I asked you to look up some synonyms? Some synonyms. I must be hungry. Oh. Some words that mean the same thing. Let's just say it that way. Did anybody come up with something different besides authentic, sincere, and genuine? Wholehearted. Yeah, wholehearted. Heartfelt, right? With everything that was in with me, sincerely. Sincere is deep affliction. Oh, that's good because I was like, I don't know what kind of thesaurus you're using, but. Okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll get there. We'll come back to that. Good. So, anyways, we got the idea. Did anybody have a different sincere, genuine, honest love, and something else? Not fake, right? Not fake. True. All of these things. Love must be all of these things, right? Not fake. From the heart. Sincere, genuine. When I read the word, this love must be sincere, I have a kind of a hard time wrapping my mind around that. What exactly does that mean? So I need to look up other words that mean the same thing to help me, right? And I think, with your whole heart. Not fake. Honest. True. The New American Standard says, love must be without hypocrisy. And that's what I can wrap my mind around a little bit better. Love must be without hypocrisy. All right, what's an example of this kind of love? Does somebody write down the answer to that? What is an example of sincere, honest, not fake love? Putting someone else's needs first. Yeah, that's a good summary. Janet, you were... Okay, mother for their child. Yes, motherhood is dying to yourself for the good of your child, right? It's all about sanctification. yeah, but but that's a great example. That is putting another first, right? I am going to sacrifice what I want truly for another person's good, right? Okay. Okay, good. It doesn't end. It doesn't end based on their performance. That's good. I like that. Right? It doesn't end based on their performance. Love. Okay, so the opposite of that, what are some words that mean the opposite of that? Insincere. That's always good. Just put a not in front of those words. Insincere. Not just sentimental, right? So love is affection and emotion and sentiment for sure. But it's so much more than that, right? Because that emotion comes and goes, right? So we need something stronger underneath it. Yeah. Dishonest. Mm-hmm. What's an example of dishonest love? Anybody? Okay, I'm going to do this for you, and then I'm expecting you to do something for me. Right? That would be dishonest love, fake love. Yeah. I love you for your money. Yeah. If you don't have any money, you don't have that problem, so. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole cultural thing, like utang na loob, yeah. And you keep track. You keep track of it mentally of everything everybody has done for you because, they're going to call in that utang, that debt, right? And you give back. Yeah. Also, it's so much easier to see this in other cultures than in our own culture. So I lived in a Buddhist culture for a long time. And Buddhists are so much this way, right? Like, they'll give to you, and you're like, oh, they're so nice. They love me so much, But it's all about karma. Like, if I do something good for you, then good is going to come back to me, right? And that's why they're so giving and generous, right? It's this whole mindset of I will give because I'm going to get. Transactional. Right. Okay. So we got the idea, right? Love can be sincere, genuine, honest, not fake, without hypocrisy, or it can be full of hypocrisy. And I'm doing it to get, and I'm doing it to serve myself. Okay. So he says, don't do that kind of love. That's not even really love, right? Do real love. All right. In our first section before our break, we're going to talk about these things that I wrote up on the board for us, right? And thinking about it in terms of love, right? But he also kind of frames them in terms of good and evil. And so in our second post-break, we're going to talk about good and evil. How does God define good and evil? But right now we're going to think about how does he define love. And so this is from my version. So your wording might be a little bit different. Some things I smushed together because it didn't all fit on the board, right? So harmony and peace, you find that two different places, two different verses. I kind of smushed some things together, reworded, but this is the basic gist of how he defines what love is, God's definition of love. Now, I could stand up here and talk about this for a little bit, and we're going to talk about some of them. I don't know if we'll get through all of them or not, but I want to hear from you. Which one of these things, as you were going through this week, stood out to you? Oh, my brain. Yes, was important to you, was impressed upon you. For either because you had a question about it, you didn't quite understand it, because you've grown in it and you're praising God because he's grown you in this area, because you currently feel like you're failing in this area. I don't know. What stood out? I got to stop saying that. What was important to you as you went through this, and why? I want to hear back from you guys a little bit. Okay. Kara is going to win the competition on who shows the most honor. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. I know. I know what you're saying. Yeah. 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 That's good. Yeah, that's good. Sorry for making fun of you. But that's a good picture. Yeah. Mm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good example. Example right in front of our faces, right? Of just when you hear them talk about one another, you hear them talk about oh, she's so good at this. Oh, she's so good at that. Oh, I really appreciate that about her. I'm calling her and seeing how she is, right? They are honoring one another, and you see that in their relationship, right? And to be known for that, wow, that person really honors. Were you going to say something over there, Allison, or not? Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, yeah. So like doing the little things too, like, I'm just going to bring you coffee just because I know you'll like it, right? Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's all kinds of ways that we can honor people, right? With our mouths, with how we act. Yes, Charlene. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think, like, as we look through these things, right, we're going to talk, how do you love someone, right? And part of involved with loving someone is truth, right? But part of knowing how to love someone is when to say the truth and how to say the truth, but say the truth. Yeah, yeah, and that might come out different in different relationships, and so, yeah, but being truthful is real love, not fake love. Fake love is not being truthful. Yeah. Yeah. So honoring, right? A word I looked up for honor was to esteem someone, to say, that you're precious to me, you're valuable to me. Okay? It's not fake, right? It's not saying, "Oh, look at that person. I honor them so much. They're just a wonderful person and they're really not a wonderful person." Like it's not fake, right? But how can you lift somebody up, encourage them, let them know that they're important to you, and outdo one another in that. How did Jesus honor other people? Can you think of an example? We're going to ask this for each thing, okay? I didn't ask you to do it in your homework, but can we think of a way that Jesus honored someone else? Yeah, 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 he'd stop. Someone would come to him in a busy day, right? And I would be like, "Sorry, don't have time. I got my checklist," And whatever that big busy day is, and I think that's the day that the bleeding woman came to him, and he stopped, because she stopped and was seeking him, and he stopped for her on his way somewhere else. Yeah, great example. So he's choosing them to follow. Is that? Yeah, yeah. Yes. Okay, I see what you're saying. Right. Hey, you're a tax collector. And no one else probably thinks you're any good, but I'm calling you to follow me. Yeah. I was thinking about the widow's mite, right? That widow in the temple. And she was just, no one would have noticed her. But Jesus not only pointed her out, but he honored. Look at what she's doing. She's your example. He honored her. And we talk about her today, right? Because he pointed her out. Honor one another. Okay. Another thought. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just associating with them. Right, so for me, that kind of goes back to, let me find it in my passage here, right? It says, "Don't be prideful, but associate with those of low position. Don't be conceited," something like that. Okay, and when I thought of that in the past, I think in terms of like economic differences, like the lowly because, they're poor or destitute, but going through it this time, I was like, sometimes you're lowly because, like Cheryl kind of said last week, like sometimes we're just ugly in our sin, right? And what if you have a sister who's just kind of ugly in her sin, and she needs someone to come and tell her some truth, to love her. She needs someone to walk with her, to help her grow, even if everyone else around has said she's too far gone, right? Are you willing to associate with the lowly? The one who's struggling, the one that needs someone beside them to tell them truth, to say, "She's my friend," right? And I'm going to help her move forward, right? I was kind of thinking about that this week. Yeah, yeah. Okay. What about another one of these? Another one of these. can look on your list as you wrote things out. Okay. Uh-huh. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Right, right, right. I thought that was really interesting, actually, to think about this in terms of this is our living sacrifice worship. And then you don't really think of rejoicing with someone who's rejoicing as a sacrifice. But sometimes it is, right? And Kara said, sometimes you are not in a joyful mood, but something really great has happened to someone, and they're rejoicing. You know what? And God says, you know what? I've got you. Let's put this to the side for just a moment. And can you turn and look at someone else? Right? Maybe someone has a baby and you struggled with infertility. Right? Maybe someone just bought a brand new car and you're struggling to pay your rent. Right? That doesn't mean that your struggle is wrong and you can't talk about it. But can you just for a moment rejoice with someone in their rejoicing? Right? Sometimes that's hard. Right? What about mourning with someone? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so, yes. There's a time for mourning. So, for example, there's a death, right? There's a time for mourning. And if you've never experienced it yourself, you think, well, the time for mourning is 3 months, and it's been 4 months. Like, get with the program, you know? I'm tired of mourning with you. It's draining me, right? But is that person still in a season of mourning? Can you enter that with them for a moment? Right? It's a sacrifice. Yeah. So we don't really think of rejoicing and mourning. You just think that, that's just being with people. But sometimes it's a sacrifice, right? And it means that you know people well enough to know what makes them happy and know what makes them sad. And you're not so focused on yourself and your own rejoicing or your own mourning that you notice it in others and you can reach out in love to others, right? Woo. Okay. I don't do that so good. All right. Good. Something else? Okay. To be patient in suffering is so hard, right? Because I'm like, this is hard. This hurts. I can't get up this morning, right? When is this going to be over? God, just teach me what I need to learn now on my timetable because I'm God and it all works on my timetable. God says, be patient. I'm doing something in you, through you, bigger than you. Right? Be patient. Yes, yeah. Sure. Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. We have to look. Sometimes when you're in the midst, you don't see the things that God's doing, and it's helpful if someone can point them out in a kind and gentle way that's not like making you feel like a failure. Okay. All right. So we have these three things: joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer, all put together in a context of love. So I often think of this like you think of it, right? Like I am to be patient in affliction, right? And that is showing my love and trust to the Lord. But I was trying to think through, how does this work out in my relationship with others? Yeah. Allison. Yeah. Sure. You're good. You're good. You're good. Okay, yeah, interesting. So these three things, joyful, patient, and faith, these are fruits of the Spirit, by the way. Right? So, right, these aren't things that we have to manufacture in ourselves. Lord, grow these in me, right? Okay. Yeah. We're going to come back to this in a minute. Did anybody have something? Okay. Okay. Right. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah, that's good. Jesus could only walk. Couldn't, I can't take care of the situation 10 miles from me right now because I'm not even there and I can't get there till tomorrow. And yeah, so it's slow. Okay. Go ahead. Yes. 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 Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. Good. So what she said, if you couldn't hear her, is we have hope for the future, right? We're going to be with the Lord, and we have this joy and this hope. But right now, we're in the time of affliction walking through this world, and we need to be patient as we walk through this world, looking towards our eternal hope. And where do we get the strength to do that? To pray, ask the Lord, right? Be faithful in prayer to help us be patient in affliction and joyful in hope. Yeah, that's good. All right, a couple things that I just wanted to point out is the, what do I have up there? Oh, hospitality, this word hospitality, okay? It just says practice hospitality or something like that. I don't know why, probably because I'm really not that, well, anyways, I don't know why, but I looked up, what does this word, okay. I looked up this word, and this is a compound word in the Greek. Now, we have to be careful. Okay, because sometimes you look at a compound word, and it's two different words that go together, and it means something, and it's helpful, right? Like a high chair, right? You put little babies in it, it's a chair that's tall. High chair makes sense, right? Okay, but the word butterfly, that's a compound word, right? But that is not butterflying through the sky, right? Okay, so you got to be careful with compound words. You can't, like, take it and go crazy with it and make something out of it that's not something. But this is a compound word, and I want to be careful, and I read around it, and a lot of different people with different ideas, and everyone pretty much agrees, right, that it's I don't know how to pronounce it, but so like philo or philo, right, which means love, like Philadelphia, the city of love. Philo, and xenia or xenia is the next part of it, which means strangers. So it means loving the stranger, hospitality, welcoming the stranger, loving the stranger. And for me, that is freeing, right? Because we think of hospitality, and we're correct, to have people over and give a good meal and all, and that's true. And some people are super gifted at that and do that quite well and encourage you to do that because that is part of hospitality. But some of us don't do that well. And so you're like, I don't even know I can't be hospitable. I don't like to do that. I'm not good at that. But welcoming the stranger, there's all kinds of ways to welcome the stranger, right? You're sitting in church and someone's beside you and you've never met them before. Then maybe their first week there, introduce yourself, ask them a question about themselves, welcome them, right? You're in some event and you see someone standing off by themselves. Go over and talk to them, welcome them, make them feel welcome, right? There's all kinds of ways that we can be welcoming to people, right? To welcome the stranger, to be hospitable, including having people over, right? And eating together or taking people out, just getting pizza, there's all kinds of ways to do this, to welcome one another, make them feel at home, comfortable, right? Okay. And again, I think we've already talked about this, but how did Jesus show hospitality? Well, the people that the culture around them rejected felt very comfortable around Christ. They could come to him and talk to him. He was hospitable. He didn't even have a home to invite people to, right? But he showed hospitality in many different ways. Okay, we're just going to stop there. One thing is, in all of these things, what we see is that love is active, right? Love is active. Sometimes, yes, it is an emotion that we feel, right? But it's not just an emotion that we feel, it's something that we do, right? It's a verb. Love is a verb. Do it. Look for ways to do it. It's active, right? That's why this is what we do with our bodies to worship our God as we go throughout our day. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but we're going to have lots of opportunities to react to the things that happen around us, not repaying evil for evil, right? Showing kindness to the enemy, like giving them a drink or something like that. Being devoted to, right? Lots of opportunities to do that as we go through our days. All right, what I want you to do, I'm going to give you a few minutes here. At your tables, right, why don't you share and talk a little bit with one another about love and how we demonstrate love. Which one of these comes easy to you? Right? Some of these just naturally come easy to. What do you find easy to do? What do you tend to struggle with? Or maybe you're in a situation now where you're really struggling, right? I'm not in harmony with this person, and I know I should work for it, but doggone it, I don't like them, Maybe you're struggling in a situation like that. Or did you have an example this week? As you were studying it this week, did you have an opportunity to actually put this into practice? How did you worship God this week by showing love in one of these ways that God defines love? Okay? You don't have to share all of those, but these are things to talk about. What do you find easy? What do you find hard? How did you worship God by loving people this week? Okay? Talk at your tables for a little bit. All right, let's come back. I do want to go over this real quick. These are just some things that I thought of. These are not things that, this is God's definition of love, right? This is God's definition of love. And we know how God defines love because he spelled it out, blah, blah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in Romans. But we also know what love is because we see it in the life of Jesus, right? He demonstrated it. So as I was going through this, I was just trying to think, how do we see this in Jesus? Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. After Jesus rose from the dead, he said, go tell my brothers that I'm going to meet him in Galilee, right? He treats us as family. We're his family, right? And we are one another's family, and you're devoted to your family, right? That's how we treat one another, devoted family. Okay. Honor, we talked about this joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. I was thinking about, I think it's Philippians, where it says, for the joy set before him, Jesus endured the cross and bore the shame, right? He had the joy. He had what was happening in the future gave him so much joy. It helped him as he endured the cross and bore the shame. He suffered in the meantime, as Janet was saying. He was patient in his affliction because of the joy set before him, right? He's our example in that. In the garden, as he's struggling with this, what did he do? He prayed, right? So that's a perfect, Janet just kind of spelled it out for us really well as Christ's example in that. Bless and do not curse. Okay. When Jesus was falsely accused, he did not falsely accuse back, right? Instead, he died. He gave the ultimate blessing, the ultimate sacrifice. He cried at Lazarus' tomb, right? He mourned. He brought peace. He brought seek harmony and peace, right? To a people that were rejecting him, including us, right? He did what was necessary. He was a living sacrifice. He was actually a dying sacrifice, right? To make peace between us and him, us and his Father. He wasn't conceited. He had humility. I think it's in Philippians chapter 2. He says he did not regard equality with God something to be grasped, but he came down and took on human flesh, right? He wasn't, I'm God. What do you mean you want me to go down and do that? No, he did not regard equality something to be grasped. We're not even close to as wonderful as Jesus is, right? We can be humble if Jesus can be humble, right? Because he's in us. Okay. Don't repay evil for evil. Again, as people were falsely accusing him, spreading lies about him, he did not turn around and do the same thing. He did not repay evil for evil. Showing kindness to your enemies. Okay, he fed the 5,000, right? Knowing that at the end of that, the outcome of all of that was that many people turned away from him. He fed the 5,000, told them, I am the bread that you need. And they were like, that's crazy talk. We don't want sacrifice. We just want food. And they left. Okay? But he fed them anyways, knowing that they were going to turn away, right? He was kind. He showed kindness to his enemies. So we see this not just in Romans, but we see this in the life of Jesus, right? And that's going to form how we respond to the things that come our way as we go through our life. Jesus lived a life of worship, and we see it. And we should be living a life of worship and do those things as well. All right. I said in the second time we're going to think about these same things again, but not in terms of love, but in terms of what's good and what's evil. Okay? And boy, does the world want to define what is good and what is evil, right? So we need to let God define in our minds what is good and what is evil. I had you make a list. What is good and what is evil? And good should have been, right? Honoring one another, serving with zeal. Like, this is the good. Okay? So what is the evil? What are some things you came up with as evil on your list of things? Yeah. But not showing genuine concern. Now, this is interesting because we don't really think of that as evil. I don't think. I think of that as, I'm just busy. Right? But God says, no, that's evil. Not showing genuine concern, because that's the opposite of what's good and loving. Okay? To be wise in your own eyes, yes. Yes, to build yourself up. I don't need to learn from anybody. I have all wisdom, right? I don't need to, to be humble, right? And to puff yourself up, right? God says that's evil. Okay, we are to, my version says, the NIV says, cling to what's good. What does the ESV says? Hold fast. Okay, hold fast to what's good, or cling to what's good. And that word means like to adhere to, like to be glued to. Glue yourself to the good, right? The world wants you to be glued to a different definition, But peel yourself off from that, because that's evil, and be glued to the good, right? Don't be too wise in your own eyes. Be honest, truly concerned about others. Anything else? That's right. Avenge. Seek. Yeah. They deserve it. And you know what? They probably do deserve it. But it's not ours to give. The fact that they deserve it is right? But we are not the arbiters of justice. Oh, I got something in my eye here. Sorry. It's not ours to give. Now, that does not mean, right, that we don't work for justice in a situation. We're supposed to work for justice, right? But we have to watch how we do that, right? We're not vengeful in our search. Just because someone deserves it doesn't mean it's ours to give, right? It's the Lord's to give. Yeah. Good. Anything else? Yes, Linda. Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, that doesn't mean you could never invite your best friend out to lunch, right? But that means sometimes go beyond that a little bit. Yeah. Pardon? Never avenge yourself, right? Like you said. I was thinking about in the blessing and do not curse. Okay, so say, for example, I get my feelings hurt. Okay, I'm just going to pick on, I don't know, Linda. She's right in front of me. Linda says something and hurts my feelings, which she has not done, but let's, for example. Okay, now, I can say, you know what? I am not going to curse her. I am not going to talk about her to you, and you know what she said to me, right? I'm not going to curse her. Well, good for me. Yeah, thank you, Lord, that I can respond in love that way. But he doesn't just say, don't curse, right? He says, bless. Oh, okay, well, maybe I'm going to go up to her then and say, you know what, you are a most welcoming person, and I appreciate that about you. Right? It's not just that I don't curse, it's that we seek to bless. And if there's something we can do that's nice to our enemy and we don't do it, God says that's evil. Flee from that. Cling to blessing your persecutor. Cling to it. That's my definition of good and love. Ay. Yeah. Anything? Mm-hmm. Right. There's all kinds of ways to respond. Yes. Right. That's my, like, I would say that to do, because I'm like, Lord, help me to love. Even that in my hurt, help me to love. Yeah. Okay, is that what you were going to say over here? Gossip. Yeah, and what is gossip can... Right, gossip is the opposite of working for peace. Right? Oh, you know what happened over here? Oh, do you know what happened over here? Oh, they got in a fight and and we're just gossiping, and that is not working for harmony. And that's kind of, I think, what you were getting at too, right? Like, say, again, I'm sorry to pick on you, Linda, but say Linda says something and it hurts my feelings, and I go and I talk to Amy about it. Is that working for peace and harmony? No, I need to go talk to Linda about it, right? Hey, Linda, when you said that, this is what I heard, and, that makes me feel bad. Like, can we talk through this? That's working for peace and harmony. Gossip is the opposite, and it's evil. I just think we don't think of it. I don't think of it in that terms. God says it's evil. Let it go. Turn away from it. Hate it. And cling to what I'm telling you is good and loving. Yeah. Good. Something else? Anything else? I think that's good, right? So we get the idea. It's like we want these ideas. That's why we're memorizing this passage, right? Or reading it again and again, even if it doesn't stick in your head, right? Because we're giving the Spirit things to work with, right? Helping us know, how do we respond to situations when they come up? How is my life a living sacrifice? How am I worshiping God in response to his mercy as I go about my day? These are good definitions that we need to know. Let me just... I asked you, let's see, what day was this, for any examples of, what was that? Well, can you think of an example? Was there something this week that you could share with the whole group of an example of someone loving this way, a time when you loved this way, or a time when you did not love this way? Probably day 4. I think it's day 4, if you're looking in your homework. And evil to overcome. 2 weeks ago, well, probably longer than that. Let's say a month ago. A month and a half ago, okay, I have a nephew, and about a month and a half ago, he works for a company that contracts out with a county, now not Allen County, he's not around here, but contracts out with a county kind of to develop that county, bring business into that county and things like that. Okay, he's just out of college, he's like 22 years old, he's learning his job, he's super responsible. I mean, he will, is putting in extra hours trying to learn his job. Okay, so the mayor of a small town in this county came to him and said, hey, I don't know what it was, but I want this done. Can you figure out can you help us do this in our city? My nephew said, that's a little bit out of the scope of what we do, but let me get back to you. I'll look into it. And the mayor said, well, I need back in like a week. And he's like, well, it's going to take me longer than a week. I'm just going to let you know it's going to take me longer than a week. Okay. So I thought everything was good. Mayor didn't like that he told him it's going to take him longer than a week, and he wrote an ad or an editorial in the paper and published my nephew's name and how irresponsible he was and terrible, and the county's paying this guy to do these things, and just raked him over the coals and said things that weren't even true. Okay, so my nephew, of course, was devastated, right? He's very upset. And he's angry that he was lied about, and he is a strong Christian, and he's upset that, like, his Christian character has just been, it's like, what does this say about my testimony for Christ? And he's just, mad, right? And should be. Like, that was just wrong. So he's trying to think what to do. How do I respond to this? And he goes, to his mom and dad and asking, how do I respond to this? And what they came up with was, this is how you're going to respond. Now, this would have been a good idea. Like, you could write another editorial and put in the paper, right, just explaining your situation in a calm manner, but he didn't. He's like, I can't. Like, every time I sit down to do that, anger comes out. So this is what he did. He finished the job, right? This guy wanted him to do something, so he got all the information together, got it, and what he said was in the 2-week time period that my nephew gave, got that all done. And then he contacted the guy, and he said, hey, I have your information done, and I need you to, I don't know if he called first or emailed first, but did one or the other, contact me, and we'll talk about this, because then he wanted to give him the information and kind of talk to him a little bit too. And the guy never contacted him. So then he contacted him a different way. Said, I've got your information, here's everything, and the guy never responded. And they're going to be at a meeting for the county, and they're both going to be at that meeting. So he brings everything with him, and he waits for this guy, right? And so this guy is like talking to this person and totally avoiding my nephew. And my nephew waited, he didn't get home till really late because he's waiting for this guy to, this guy's hoping that my nephew will leave, and he didn't leave. And he went up to him and he said, hey, here's the information. This is what you asked for, and you asked for it in a certain time period, and here it is, and this is what we would suggest, and, And the guy said, oh, I'm not avoiding you. And he was like, well, it feels like you're avoiding me. But here's the information. And we think that this company over here would does better than what we do in what you're wanting. And the guy just said some, I don't know, not very nice comments to him, and he left. Okay, he just took it. Now, maybe there's some things he could have done a little better, but you know what? I am so proud of him. And this is what we meant to do. God says here in Romans that good overcomes evil. Right? And we don't think that, how can that possibly be? How can good overcome evil? Because evil is so harsh, right? Now, in one sense, good did not overcome evil in this situation. If you think what he needed was that man needed to write another thing and put in the newspaper about how he was wrong and defamed my nephew's character. That would have been awesome, right? But that didn't happen. But what happened was Nate did good. Anyway, you don't know anyways. Nate decided, hi Nate, if you're watching, Nate decided not to hate. He clung to what was good, right? And evil did not come into his life and overtake him and mold him into its character. He said, no, Lord, help me. Let you and your definition of good and love mold how I respond to this situation. So you may say it doesn't really look like love won because he didn't get that retraction. But in God's eyes, love won because Nate did not let Satan affect his response. That's a win in God's eyes. And we need to know that that's a win. Because sometimes we think a win looks like grand justification, right? Everybody knows. But the win is what's going on in your heart. How are you responding to the Lord? Are these words forming you, molding you into God's definitions of love and the good and the evil? As I was going through this, well, before I started working on this in real, right, I had a situation where this is not a big deal, but somebody needed something, not anybody that goes to church here, but a Christian sister, and she needed some help, okay? And I was able to do it. But I did not want to do it. It was like, oh, that's going to take effort. That's going to take a little sacrifice. I don't really know if I want to do that, right? And I told her I couldn't do it. A couple weeks later, sit down. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. And I was super convicted. Super convicted. Heather, that's your sister. She needed help. And it wasn't even putting you out much to do anything about it. You just let your feelings get in the way of letting God love her through you. You are not devoted. Like if someone said, oh, do you love that person? You would have said, yeah, I love her. She's awesome. But that's not sincere. That's not right. No, I'm not saying you have to do everything that anybody asks you to do, right? But there's times when we know, right? Yeah, it's going to cost me a little bit, but Lord, help me to be devoted, right? And I was convicted because how I responded in the moment was not, I clung to what was evil, my own self, what I wanted. I didn't cling to what God wanted. I didn't let him define me, right? This is everyday kind of stuff, right? Also, that's my failure. This is, yay, God did something good in me. I had a kind of a rough patch with another friend, right? Things got a little tense for a while, and it got a little rough. And I got my feelings hurt, right? And this is what I think this is talking about. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor in serving the Lord and talking about how do we love others. Because this hurt pretty bad. And I was like, you know what? I'm kind of done. I'm just kind of done with getting to know people because people just hurt you. I don't want this to happen again, right? And I lost my spiritual fervor in serving the Lord because he calls us to love others. And I was like, I just don't think I can do it anymore. Okay? But reading through these verses is like, no, that's not what God calls you to. And I can't do it anymore, but the Spirit's in me, and he can revive that zeal, and he can help me. And I can be joyful in hope that God can restore that relationship, right? I have hope for the relationship, hope for my heart, hope for her heart, right? I can be patient in the hurt, right? And faithful in praying for myself and praying for her, right? That keeping my zeal in serving others, because serving others will bring hurt into your lives. It just will. We hurt one another. I hurt people unintentionally, sometimes intentionally. I'm very sorry. And other people hurt me, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, right? But we keep our spiritual zeal in loving one another because God says, I have bought you and you reflect me and this is who I am, right? And you love other people, even if it costs you. You're winning in the cost, right? You're clinging to the good. God's Spirit is working in you. Don't cling to what's evil. That's what this is talking about. Okay? All right. I think we're just going to end there. And we have lots of time to share prayer requests, right? Maybe something from the lesson has come up, right? Oh boy, you know what? I feel like I've been clinging too much to this, and I need help letting it go. Can you pray for me that God helps me let it go? Maybe you have a prayer request totally not related to our lesson at all. That's okay. That's allowed, right? But talk with one another, share with one another, and pray with one another.